Welcome to another episode of TXCPA Houston Virtual Rolodex. We're going to take a little bit of different turn for this episode. I have asked some of our corporate sponsors to come and give us quarterly updates in their area of expertise. And our first one for this quarter is Goodman Financial. Now, you heard from Steve a couple weeks ago, who is the founder of Goodman Financial, and today we have Hunter here. And he's going to come and we're going to do a little bit of a wrap up of second quarter, kind of what's happening in third quarter that we know you as our community and the viewers and listeners. These are things you need to be aware of. So, first of all, thank you, Hunter, for joining us. Can you just give us a little bit of background on who you are?
Yeah, thank you, Christy, for having me. It's a pleasure to be on. Yeah, my name is Hunter Cody, and I am a senior financial advisor at Goodman Financial. Like Christy mentioned, Steve was on a few weeks ago and kind of gave a little overview of the firm for those that aren't familiar with us. But really, we're a financial planning and investment management firm, and so we work with all sorts of clients and families, and even some nonprofits and institutions to help them with their financial picture and feel more confident about it. So that ranges from a whole variety of things between investing, retirement planning, even tax planning. We don't do tax returns, but we do a lot on the tax side. And I think I'll speak to a few of those things today, but that just kind of gives you an overview of what we do. And my role in that is really working directly with my clients, and having good relationships with them and helping them where they need my expertise.
That's perfect. Yeah, a few things have happened since July 1st. The one thing that's hitting the headlines for tax practitioners and those in financial planning and even those in accounting world, no matter what, is that one big, beautiful bill. So, from your guys' perspective, what are things that our community needs to understand and that's impacting potentially the tax planning and the financial planning?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, for one, it's a mouthful. I think they tried to make it as long as possible on the name there. But yeah, it's interesting. It's one of the things that we've followed pretty closely throughout, even the bill being developed and just kind of seeing what are they thinking about this and how is it going to impact our clients. But as you mentioned, that was recently signed, and so there's a lot of different provisions in there. The actual text is over, I think, 900 pages. So there's a lot
Yes.
to unpack there. Where we look at it is really how does it affect our planning and what are the most important provisions for our clients? One of the things that we just did here recently that we're sending out to all of our clients is a summary of the bill and what things might affect them and are most important to know. And so I can go over a few of those with you. You know, from the inception, when you think about this bill and how it came about, a lot of it was looking at extending some of those provisions from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was set to expire at the end of this year. So some of the provisions you see in there, for example, the standard deduction really remaining still very high. That's one of the things that was permanently put in place and kept with this new bill. So it's one of the things out there. Similarly with the tax rates. The tax rates were set to sunset and go back to some of those old rates, which would be an increase really for everybody across the board in some sort of way, where you had some of those middle tax brackets actually going up in rates, and so now those have all been permanently extended. So those are a few things that really affect everybody across the board. Now, the other thing we think about when we do our long range planning for clients is permanent is also a relative word in terms of it's permanent until somebody else decides to get rid of it, right? Or change it.
Right.
So that's something we kind of keep in mind. There's a few other things that were added for specific people. One of those was the enhanced senior deduction. So that's now a new deduction that people over 65 are going to be able to receive. And one thing that's just kind of interesting and you have to pay attention to in this new law is when are these going into effect and when are they also expiring? Some things, like I mentioned, the normal standard deduction and the tax rates are permanent. They're going to stay, for a long time. That enhanced senior deduction is really going to be around for the next 3 years, but it starts this year. So that's something that affects people this year and the next few years. And within these provisions as well, one of the things to pay attention to is they've got these income phase out limits. And so with that senior deduction, that starts to phase out around $150,000 for married filing joint couples. So for people that may be right on that cusp of 150,000, that's where we want to work with them and say, if there is a way to just decrease your income slightly for the year and get under that 150 if you were just going to be above it, that's something we would try to work with them on to figure out. One of the other big things that's affecting people who don't take that standard deduction but instead itemize was the state and local tax cap, that SALT cap. That's been a subject of discussion for a number of years because it's been at that $10,000 cap for a long time. And so you take, property taxes, you take any state income tax, other things you add in there. A lot of people are above that 10,000, but they get limited out. And so this bill actually has a big impact for those people where it's temporarily going to go up to 40,000 for the next few years. Now, it's not permanent. Again, it's only going to be here through 2029. But there's a few years here for those people where we can do some planning and figure out how did they do the timing of property taxes and pairing that with other itemized deductions like charitable giving and those sorts of things, and just trying to figure out what's the best strategy for them to take advantage of it. And again, on that one, you've also got that phase out limitation that starts to happen later on. So there's at $500,000, that $40,000 deduction starts to phase out again. And once you get to 600,000, it goes back down to 10 completely. So for people who are in that income range, really trying to do some proactive planning to make sure that they don't get limited out by their income in those areas. So all those sorts of things are things that we look at for our clients as we're looking at their planning over time. And then the only other thing I'd mention there, again, there's a lot of other provisions we could get into, but trying to keep it high level. One of the things that was on people's mind that was addressed with this bill as well was the estate tax exemption. It's been high for a long time, and it was also set to be roughly cut in half. Instead, it's been actually increased and extended. So now it was right around under 14 million per person exemption. Now it's been bumped up to 15 million instead of being cut in half. So that provides a lot of clarity for some people that may have been worried about having a taxable estate or trying to maybe even do some planning before the end of the year when that was set to sunset. So those are a few of the major things that we've looked at. Again, there's a lot to unpack there though.
There is, and I had the opportunity last week to do a couple hours of continuing education. I have to tell you that it was mind-boggling of the different. This is for 2020, starting 2025, but this is 2026. This phase out here, and I was just like, is someone going to make me like a pretty little roadmap? That's,
Yeah.
just where it all goes. And I think for the individual taxpayer, that's going to be really important when they are planning. And I will stress to each and every one of you, take the time in July and August, sit down. What does this mean for you? Reach out to your financial planner if you don't have one. Goodman has classes for the community, or, reach out to your CPA and your tax professional so that you can make the most of these exemptions and deductions and understand them. Because I think that's the biggest thing is if you can look at your income and be like, oh, I'm at 149, but I'm 66 years old. What can I do to make sure of everything? So thank you for that oversight. I think the next item that a lot of those in our community, because they are one of the age of Social Security, or two, get into the age, or three, are a child who has to help their parents and everything. is that Social Security Fairness Act that was passed earlier this year. But what is that impact on the clients, on the community that's listening today?
Yeah, that was a big one. And Social Security is something that a lot of our clients and everybody really has questions about in some sort of way because there's so many different nuances to consider. You know, that Social Security Fairness Act in particular, I would say had a really positive impact for a lot of people across the board. Previously, what the act was designed to address was there was two different provisions previously. One is called the windfall elimination provision, and the other is the government pension offset. And really, what those did was for anyone that had pensions through their work, it started to either reduce entirely their Social Security or reduce partly. And that can come about in a number of different play areas where if you had your spouse was eligible for Social Security, but you weren't, you're eligible to get some of their benefit as well. But if you had a pension, uh-oh, it's being limited or starting to be taken away. Same thing for people who maybe had a pension from work, but had also paid into Social Security through other jobs throughout their life. They also start to get limited and it taken away. And really, I mean, those bills were previously designed to just try to make it fair previously, but I think it ended up with some intended unintended consequences where you had teachers, for example. You know, my mom is
Yeah.
a teacher, so she was going to be affected by this, where teachers haven't paid into Social Security, but now they also can't get Social Security off of their spouse because there of these different provisions, and it seemed a little bit unfair. Same thing when you talk about public service workers, you know, firemen, policemen who'd received a pension, and even people who worked in the government and didn't pay into Social Security. They kind of all ended up actually getting more negatively infected than you would have thought. And so this Social Security Fairness Act really got rid of those two provisions entirely. And so what that means is you now have people that their Social Security, where it was fully reduced, are now able to receive it, or where it was getting limited, they're now going to get a higher increase moving forward. So it's a really good thing for a lot of people in terms of their financial situation. The amount they can receive from Social Security is always good. You know, logistically, the way it ended up playing out is kind of interesting because you've got this act that gets put into place, but then how does Social Security actually administer it? And so
Hmm.
for a number of our clients, really what we saw happen was the act was actually made retroactive a little bit to where it started to affect people's benefits in 2024, actually. And so most people, if you were already receiving Social Security, but it was maybe being limited, you actually got a lump sum payout that should have already occurred this year. And so that does make an impact on their taxes and something you
Yep.
have to plan for there. But then they also should have started to receive an increase in their monthly benefit here in the last month or two, and that's going to take effect moving forward. The key thing I think for people to know where maybe previously they knew I'm not even going to try to file for Social Security because I know I can't get it. You know, those are the people that you may want to have a conversation with Social Security and make sure that that still is the case because things may have changed significantly for you. And if you weren't already in the Social Security system and had tried to file before, you want to make sure that you're not missing out on any benefits there. So those are kind of the few things to know. The only side note I would say is while this is helpful for people to receive more Social Security overall, it does actually compound on a different problem that's been occurring, which is the Social Security, the future of the Social Security Trust Fund and how long that can continue to
Yeah.
pay benefits. So paying more now actually puts a little bit of a further strain on that, but that will be addressed at some point down the line. Just don't know exactly how, but there's a lot of different options for dealing with that. So that's kind of what we've seen for our clients. I know one example in particular, we had a widowed spouse who she did work for the federal government and receives a pension. And so her husband was eligible for Social Security. He had passed away. And so she had been receiving zero in Social Security benefits this entire time because of those provisions and her pension that she had.
Mhm.
Now she was able to contact Social Security and she's receiving basically his full benefit that she's entitled to. So for her, that was a big, I mean, $3,000, $4,000 of income that now she gets per month that she previously didn't have at all. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that is, it's, one of those stories. It's like, oh, she can, because you hear about the seniors having, budgeting financial because they're trying to balance their budgets, but that extra dollars really does help. So glad to hear this because yeah, well, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago is when I first came across the pension and like, yeah, I can't do Social Security. I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was one of those like, oh my goodness, that's but you had jobs where you paid into Social Security. So glad that they were able
Mhm.
to come to a conclusion to make it fair for all. Now we're going to switch gears because I think this is heavy on the community's mind because it's on the news every single night, and that is the market. How is the market doing these days?
Yeah, seems to be the question of the day or the week here. I mean, I would say so far in 2025, the big word is just uncertainty and not really knowing what's going to happen next.
Mhm.
That's always the case when you look at the markets and investing and even economics as a whole. This year it's been amplified a little bit by a lot of the tariff news and things that have unfolded. Rolling it back a few months, you'll remember in April when those initial announcements came out and we had a big shock to the stock market where everything dropped, and then really since then, it's come back where the S&P 500 is up 7% or so year to date. So things seem to be a little bit better, but still there's that uncertainty as things continue to unfold and where do the tariffs actually land? We've seen it continue to get drawn out, and so a lot of it is uncertainty, and that has businesses unsure exactly how to plan and provide guidance, and a lot of them just almost holding course, and not exactly extending themselves as much as maybe you'd normally see. So I think where I work with clients on is making sure that their portfolios and investments are really suited to their situation and their risk tolerance. At Goodman, we've got a whole investment team where they are looking at the investments every single day and providing guidance. And we get together as advisors with them on a weekly basis to talk strategy and what are things that we need to know. But for us, whenever you see these volatility and times where people are anxious, we can kind of view it in two ways. One is just making sure that if we've done our job, or also for those out there, if you've allocated your portfolio to be in line with your risk tolerance, how tolerant are you to ups and downs,
Yeah.
and um, also to be situated with your time horizon. If you're somebody that needs access to your funds and your portfolio right now or in the next 5 years, you don't want to be so aggressive that these times of volatility or these big drops make you super nervous, right? So
Mhm.
that's one thing, is just making sure that our clients are allocated appropriately for their risk tolerance and time horizon. But then the other thing, like in these times of volatility, is really we can look at it as an opportunity. So for those that either had excess cash that they were considering investing, maybe speeding up the time of that, we had multiple clients that we talked to where, okay, the market has dropped and it's down. Is this an opportunity you want to try to take advantage of? And
Mhm.
for our clients that do have that longer time frame, this is a good time to do it. Again, you have to also be comfortable with we still don't know what 3 months from now will look like, but we do know that, long term, it's reasonable that the markets are going to continue to go up, right? So, for those sorts of clients, we've looked at those things. For others, it's just reassuring them and making sure that their strategy is right and that they stay on the path that they need to be on. The worst um, consequences that we see from clients is when, oh no, let's overreact and let's get off of the course that we were on, and that can have unintended, not so great consequences. So a lot of it is just continuing to stay the course, and making sure that you're allocated the way you want to and that you're comfortable and can sleep at night.
And I think that's it, is being comfortable, that tolerance. I know for myself, it's quarterly discussions, and it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm good. And it's always funny, like, oh, do you have any questions? No. Like, I'm 20 years out, I think, from retirement. I know there's going to be ups and downs. I've been doing this for 30 years already. I but I am a different being than someone who is 75 and being like, what should I do? Type of thing. And,
Mhm.
the one thing I love about the Goodman Financial team, and being honest, I know almost all of you guys have grown, so I don't know the new ones as much, but it's that calming reassurance and the ability to be like, okay, where do you feel the anxiety? And let's talk
Mhm.
about it. And in this geopolitical environment we are in right now, there is a lot of uncertainty. But if we think about the last 100 years, we've gotten through the uncertain times. We've always come out on the other side. So I guess that's what I think about. Like, yeah, there's going to be some lows, and like, then I like, here's $1,000, go do something with it, thanks, and then I just forget about it, type of thing. But
Mhm.
and having that reassurance that you're not going to get hit all the lows. You're not going to cash out at all the highs. I
Mhm.
remember that from Finance 101, don't even try to play the market that way. So, well, Hunter, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to yourself being back for next quarter's update, or whoever you drag in here to talk about what's going on, because the end of the third quarter will be here in October. We'll be here before we know it. And that's when a lot of the tax planning has to start. I'm telling you, be proactive, get it done in July and August. Then October is easy peasy. You just update it a little bit. But thank you, Hunter. I appreciate you being here. And thank you to Goodman Financial for being a corporate sponsor. I always enjoy having you guys on the virtual Rolodex. And their information will be in the show notes, so don't hesitate to reach out to Hunter and the team and just, see what they can help you with. So thank you, Hunter.
Thank you so much, Christy.